What's up, Josh? Thanks for following me on YouTube and Instagram, and thanks for the emails and the DMs and all that stuff. I hope this video serves you well. First and foremost, you are incredibly talented. Your arm is through the roof, very, very, very elite for your age bracket, relative to your age, right? And your level. You're through the roof fantastic. So I kind of want to start off by saying, like, whatever you have been doing, just keep kind of doing it, because your baseline is so incredibly high for other players at your age that I feel like you're on your way to be something very good and very special, to the point where I'm like, hey, I wonder if you want to come up here in Massachusetts and play for us when you're 17. But let's just go into your actions here. And let's start with the very good. I think the very good is your upper half, right? We start getting into handbrake. We get that nice pronated glove. So our glove is kind of getting into a thumbs down position. You're showing the palm of the glove to the target that you're about to get to. Good extension right here with the glove side arm is what I'm referring to at the moment. Eyes are level. The upper half is stacked very well over the back side. Like a lot of good things happening in this position here, where we have like this slight angle going into our back hip. We have a neutral wrist right there, so you're not pronating your wrist. If we zoom in there, you get a lot of kids that once they get to this position, they're starting to pronate their arm. So their thumb starts digging for you. The thumb would start like turning towards the shortstop and really getting into that position where, I mean, a lot of coaches, just for lack of a better term for the moment, like thumb to thigh, ball to sky, or pointing the ball to center field, right? That actually causes a huge pronation of the arm, and we have to supinate anyways to get the home plate. So if you're overly pronating, you're putting yourself in a position to be very late within your delivery, and you're going to miss high and arm side a ton. You're actually not doing that. You have a nice, strong, firm grip and neutral wrist in this position, which I really like. And like I mentioned before, check out the glove, nice and pronated, neutral wrist, very strong position. Our hip is relatively in some good depth. You're going to see in the angle from behind areas where we can improve this move there. But again, relative to your age, this is, a through the roof elite position. Foot is in the ground. So if we go into the foot here, we see that our foot is in the ground, nice and cemented. So I love it. I love all the position, this position of strength that we're in here. So keep it up in terms of this position, especially with the arms, the glove arm and the throwing arm. So if we continue, zoom out back, if we continue kind of into foot strike, you're going to see at your throwing arm and your glove begin to fold. So the glove side begins to fold and the throwing arm starts to elevate into position, into arm cock, going into foot strike, which, equal but opposite. This is exactly what I want, and this is exactly what I'm kind of referring to, that both sides need to supinate eventually. So having that pronated glove and having a neutral wrist, both going into supination together, are very important. Like, we want that supinated glove that's going to delay our front side enough to be able to rotate the back end of our delivery and not fly open with that front shoulder. So it's a very important little nugget that a lot of players don't get to accomplish. They don't come out in pronation with the glove. You actually do that. So continue with that. We're getting into our scaps, our serratus anterior, lowest scap, upper scap, or lower trap, upper trap, which are all the muscles contributing around the scapula. And you're doing a very good job getting into it, having good abduction of the arm, and getting, once we get into foot plant, which is about right there, we have a beautiful, and I mean through the roof, beautiful angle of our throwing arm. This is perfect where you want to be right there. So if you think about 90-degree angles and you think about that forearm being parallel to the ground, and if your forearm, and that's 0 degrees, and if your forearm is perfectly vertical, that's 90 degrees. You're floating within about a 45 to 80 degree position right there with your forearm, which is what we want. And once our torso starts rotating, my arm gets into external rotation, and you get incredible max external rotation for your age as well. So very good flexibility in the shoulder joint and through the throwing zone. And that's where we're going to get a lot of our velocity from the upper half. So this shows me that your arm, like once we get our arm in position there, it really just takes advantage and starts regulating the energy from the rest of your body. So your arm does a very good job getting in position. I think this is the goal. I don't care what you do prior, whether, zoom out here, whether you're a guy that has an arm swing, whether you're a guy who reaches back to second base. So you kind of have like a little bit of an arm swing right here with the throwing arm, whether you are like a Lucas Giolito and just kind of get into your 90-degree angle. When we get into foot plant, we want to be in this position here. We want to be in a position where our arm is back into a 90-degree flexion. So just think about flexing your bicep. We get into that 90-degree flexion, even slightly within, and then we get that forearm to be somewhere within that 45 to 80-degree angle that I was referring to. So again, if the forearm is parallel to the ground, that's 0 degrees. If the forearm is completely vertical, that's 90 degrees. We want to be working somewhere between that 45 to 80 degree mark, depending on hip to shoulder separation for the particular player. That can be manipulated a little bit, but you're there. And then your torso carries you into external rotation once the torso starts receiving the energy from your pelvis. So very, very, very strong position. You're into foot plant. Your hips start firing there. I think we can afford a little bit more hip flexibility for you. So something to work on is just to be a little bit more flexible within the pelvis. Again, the pelvis is key, right? So the pelvis is kind of this area. It's what attaches our hip bones, right? And the pelvis is, if you have pelvic awareness, you are going to be able to separate. So that's moving your lower half in a separate act to your upper half, right? So your upper half, for example, should stay neutral and quiet during this phase here, your drive phase, which you do, and then the lower half starts rotating. So you do a very, very good job. Again, elite job for your age level, but there's still a little bit of flexibility that we can get through the hip to kind of increase your hip to shoulder separation. When we get to foot plant, your hips are firing, they're accelerating into foot plant, which I love. But just it's a room for improvement. I can send you some stretches that you can be doing on your own at home to kind of increase this move a little bit, hip to shoulder flexibility. So, but still, very, very elite, very, very good job. The front leg is, as you see, it's going to drift a little bit between these two frames, right? We get the foot plant and we don't fully halt our energy. I think it's because it's kind of getting some of that late energy from the pelvis. So if we can get our pelvis to rotate a little bit sooner and accelerating a little bit sooner into foot plant, we hopefully don't have this little forward flexion. Now, it's not horrendous. Once we get into the next frame, that's when you stop your forward momentum. So what I'm talking about, if I can draw a line here. So let's draw a line on the knee right there. So I shouldn't see my knee get past this line in this area here, right? But if I go, you see that I cross that line. So you're not halting your energy. I don't think this is a strength issue. For some people, it is a strength and stability issue. For you, I think it is the ability to fire the hips a click sooner. Like we're talking a frame, right? So this is like super, super difficult. So, but I think flexibility is something that can enhance this move and really stop that forward momentum, so we can really stick our foot into the ground. And the only thing going forward is really going to be my torso and my throwing arm. Very minute. I've seen this move be performed incredibly poorly by much more advanced athletes and older athletes. So you are well ahead of the curve. Now we get through the throwing zone with our arm. Like I said, I already mentioned the external rotation. You get pretty decent forward trunk tilt, considering the force that you are creating with the backside. So our trunk basically tilting towards the ground, getting closer to parallel with the ground, not throwing from an upward spine position. So this is, again, very elite for your age. So you do a very good job there. And your follow through with the upper half is money. Your hand gets around and you kind of see your hand in this little window there. See your hand come through. That's great deceleration patterns with your hand. Your glove gets out of the way so that your hand can actually create this move. So great decel patterns from you. And you see here all the stress that you're putting on your foot. Your heel comes off a little bit. And again, I think that goes back. This is a byproduct of not being able to fully accelerate our pelvis into foot strike the way that we want to. So you put so much more stress in your foot to halt that energy that you're creating during your drive, that you're trying your damnness, that your heel actually comes off. Now, this could be, and this is the tough part with not being with you and not really assessing you physically, there could be ankle flexibility issues here. So that's something for you to assess. There can also be hamstring flexibility and strength issues because if your heel comes down, you're firing the hamstring at a much higher rate when your heel is pressing through the floor. So again, something for you to personally assess. If you have the hamstring flexibility and the ankle flexibility, then again, this just goes back to the hip flexibility and not being able to fire hips properly or efficiently into foot plant. And I'm using the term properly, like not having them fire properly, very loosely. It's probably a pretty strong term because again, you are well above the curve when it comes to that. Now, a couple other cues that tells me our hips are tight. Now let's get back to the beginning. Okay, let's pay attention to our front foot. So our front foot is staggered, kind of facing the second baseman, first base bag, right? So we kind of preset that angle with the foot. But when we get into leg raise, we see that our knee likes to kind of do this, right? So it's like the hip is opening right away. You never really get into a closed hip joint position with that front leg. This could be you're just susceptible to hip abduction. Like that's where your body wants to get to. So again, hip flexibility is a priority for you going forward. But I mean, we do see that knee kind of flip open just a little bit and the foot starts flipping open. And I think that's a byproduct of the hip just staying in an open joint position as opposed to a closed joint position. So when we get to this point of our delivery, our front hip wants to be in a closed joint position, so it should feel like it's going in this direction, along with our back hip. But that means our back hip is now in an open joint position, so abducting. Our back hip is abducting away from me, right? It's going towards the second base bag, our back hip. Our front hip should follow a little bit, right, through our pelvis. And this goes back to pelvic control and pelvic awareness. So that was like the initial cue for me to, when looking at the rest of your delivery, to think, I wonder if he has like tight hips. And again, I'll send you like a little movement series that you can have and do and perform at home with your hips and your pelvis that should increase your movement capacity of the hip and of the hip joint. So check that out and try it out as well. I think that's the biggest thing from this view that I get here that we can get improved. So check out the little breakdown from behind. It's going to show one more little deficiency that you can work on. But I hope from this view, you at least got something on this video. Okay, here's another angle of you throwing. Thank you for sending me both videos. Hope the first video, you found some good stuff out of and got some good stuff out of that. So let's just pay attention to your lower half from this little video here. We see that our shin is slightly angled. The one thing that I want to avoid now is ensuring that my knee doesn't continue to drift towards the first base bag. So I want my knee to stay behind my toes. I'm talking about my rear knee, my drive leg knee. I don't want that drifting towards the first base bag, and I do not want my knee to overlap my toe, right? That's if you're looking for velocity and efficiency. Okay, if I do that, you get yourself in more a lunging position as opposed to a hinging position, and we become more quad dominant as opposed to hamstring and glute dominant, right? And we want to be throwing with our hamstrings and glutes and with our foot, within the ground, my entire foot. So if I start drifting my knee towards first base, that means that I'm applying pressure onto my toe, added pressure onto my toe, and relieving pressure from my heel, right? So my full foot isn't into the ground. I actually don't use ground forces to the best of my capabilities. Okay, so just watch out, because as we get into leg lift here, right, we go from this slightly bent athletic position, which I like, into a vertical position. So our leg stiffens out here, going vertically there. And then we try to get ourselves back into that athletic position. And now, you do a really, really good job to somewhat sit into my bum. So my bum's going this way. I'm getting into my hip and my glutes and my hamstrings. You do like a really good job getting there. It can just be a smidge better, right? So if we can start from this position and stay in this position into leg lift instead of going vertical and then back down, right? I think you're going to be a little bit more efficient within your drive phase. Secondly, we see our foot, our lead leg foot, as we're going down, it immediately starts drifting back into this direction and parallel with my back leg. Okay, I would rather you take this leg from this position out of leg lift and bring it and extend it out in front of your body. If my leg is extended out in front of my body, that's the counterweight I need to get me more into a seated position and activate those glutes, activate those hamstrings, keeping my knee behind my toe and getting me in a very efficient drive to home plate where the muscle groups that I need to be applying, using, and firing are doing so. So really try to get this leg out in front of your body, right? And I can show you a clip of Blake Snell. There's a bunch of guys. If you follow me on Instagram, there are a couple posts that actually refer this movement. So out of leg lift, my leg wants to get into extension, right? Into or in front of my body. So my leg should be looking like this, as opposed to this angle and parallel to your foot. So you get into leg lift, your leg wants to go down and parallel to the back foot, when in actuality we want it to come down and be somewhere in this window right here. Okay, so really, really try that out. Again, getting that move down is going to allow you to get into your legs a little bit better and increase your drive phase. And hopefully that extra acceleration is going to help your hips accelerate into foot strike. Again, I hope you like this video and you got something out of it. And I hope to hear from you. See you later.